I am Nikki Youngblood-Giles, and I am one of the deans for Beyond Barnard. And I am so excited about this session for today and this entire week. We have a great group joining us this entire week. This is Business School, an Introduction. It's a series of workshops dedicated to students and alums who have an interest or thinking about business school as an option post-grad, post-Barnard, or even alums who are in the field now and thinking about this as an option. So we have a great suite of programs planned for this week. Today, I'll go into that in just a moment. But tomorrow, we will have an information session from our colleagues at the business school at Columbia Business School. And they are especially interested in talking to Barnard students because we have a special deferred admissions program for Barnard students. They'll talk about that tomorrow. And on Wednesday, we will have faculty, Pam Copeland and Wendy Shore-Haim, join us to talk about the personal statement process and thinking about that as you think about business school. And then Thursday, we have panels, a panel of Barnard alums. Sheila is a Barnard alum who's joining us today, but there will be some more Barnard alums on Thursday, and they will be talking about their experiences in business school. But today, we are setting the frames. We're setting the context for the entire week. And this is, I'm so excited because we've got two powerhouses with us for today. Sheila Murphy is a Barnard alum and a Barnard parent, and also Greg Triandis. He is a Barnard parent, and you may recognize him because he is also on the team at Beyond Barnard. And they're here today to kind of set the frame. What are you thinking about when you think about business school? And they're here to talk about the practical element of it. So Sheila is going to talk to us a little bit about her trajectory as a Barnard alum, how she thought about business school, what was the impact of her, and also as now that she's been in her career, how has it impacted her and what she would offer suggestions for those thinking about it in the future. And then Greg is going to bring us the perspective of he is working with employers. So he is our lead for employer relations within Beyond Barnard. So he can really talk to us about what employers are thinking about when they are considering potential applicants. Have they gotten the MBA? Are they thinking about it? What does that mean to them? And also working with other students and alums who are thinking about business school. So he's going to add that practical element. So I'm going to let them talk a little bit. This is really about a conversation, and then we're going to we're going to add time in for question and answer to make sure that we get your questions and answers in. I'm going to add the attendance sheet to the chat. So if you could take a look in just a minute and add just your name and uni, just so that we can make sure we can keep in contact with you. And then from there, I'll be quiet for a few minutes and let Sheila start us off. Welcome, Sheila Murphy.
Okay, thanks, Nikki. It's great to be invited. It's been a while. Okay, so I graduated from Barnard in 1980 with a degree in economics, and didn't really want to keep going to school. I was more interested in getting out to work at that point. And my older sister had gone to Columbia Business School, and she worked in Big 8 public accounting firm, and knew of a program that they had at the time where they had liberal arts graduates from Barnard and other, kind of liberal arts colleges, and you could get a job in the public accounting firm as well as get admitted to NYU Business School. So I thought that was a pretty good idea. So I started at NYU Business School shortly after graduation, almost immediately for that summer full time. And in the fall, went to work in public accounting and went to school at night. And in those days, NYU Business School was down by the Trade Center. It's now up at Washington Square, but it was downtown. So it was a bit of a schlep to go to school at night. But I worked in public accounting, which is, were Big 8 firms. I think there's 4 now, and they've consolidated, which was a great place to start working because it was a lot of variety of clients. I went to the clients and actually did the audits. And you got a great picture of a lot of different industries. And I like that a lot. It was a great place to start. And then the program that I was in at NYU actually led to an MS in accounting, and you could continue on for the MBA. So I did do that. So it took me 5 years. I finished the MBA in 1985, but it was a really productive 5 years for me. The public accounting experience gave you the qualifications to sit for the CPA exam, New York State CPA exam. So I did that, which is like a big test. It's a 4-stage test. So at the end of the 5 years, I had an MBA and I was certified as CPA. And I moved up in the public accounting world pretty well. So in 1985, the economy had started to really pick up, and there were a lot of public offerings, initial public offerings. I worked on some of those. And so I noticed that the lawyers and the deals were getting paid a lot more than the accountants and deals. So that's when I decided to go back to school. So I went back to law school. I went to Pace in Westchester. I live in Westchester. So I'm back to Pace Law School, and I took a job in a law firm, pretty much as a paralegal during the time that I was in school. So I learned a lot there, and I took a job with them when I finished law school in 1990, and stayed at that firm on and off for about 20 years. And since I had the accounting background and I was pretty comfortable with numbers, I sort of gravitated to the tax and estate and business planning practice, which is pretty much what I've done my whole law career. So right now, I'm in a small law firm in Greenwich. We have about 8 to 10 lawyers, and I concentrate primarily in estate and trust work. I do estate planning, I do estate tax returns, I do business planning, succession planning for businesses. I do work with the IRS. I represent people in front of the IRS, the tax court, and the Supreme Court in Westchester County through litigation around estates, which is not my favorite, but it's part of the business. So I do that too. And I've liked the aspects of the things about public accounting that I like to carry over into a law practice. Really variety of clients, something different almost every day. But the business school experience is pretty helpful, because my personal philosophy is everybody's really in business. Whether you're in a law firm, you have to worry about revenues and expenses, or you're in a not-for-profit. My sister works with a lot of not-for-profits. You got to raise money. So I think that's really essential to whatever you do. So that's where I am kind of right now. It's a long, circuitous kind of career path, but I think the MBA was pretty helpful in terms of giving me flexibility in the job market. I think it's a credential that people recognize that you have some expertise. So I think for me, it was a good investment. In thinking about whether to do it or not in terms of timing out of school, I know you were interested in that, Nikki. I think probably working a little bit is a good idea, because when you go to business school, a lot of the people, the majority, I think, of the people have some work experience, which is pretty valuable, both as a classmate to you, kind of listening to them. And in the old days in the business school, it was the case method. And so it's a real live case, it's a real live course about a business having a problem and how do you solve it. And people who've been in a business have a little bit better bent for that, I think. So, and I don't think it matters what you do before you get to business school, but I think just having some experience outside of academia is pretty useful. So that's kind of my story of how I got to where I am today. So the other consideration I think today is a real cost benefit, to be done in terms of the cost of business school is pretty staggering. And also factoring in that you're not working for that period of time. So I think every individual kind of has to do that cost benefit analysis for themselves. But in the long run, I think it's really a good credential. Let's see.
Thanks, Sheila.
Okay.
And so we'll go over to Greg and then we'll come back over. I'm going to ask a few questions before we bring it to the students. But Greg, can you talk to us a little bit about your experience? So first, your personal experience, because you had a long life before coming to Barnard. So tell us a little bit about that. And then also share a little bit about, what you're finding that employers are looking for when they think about whether or not applicants have the MBA or are thinking about an MBA.
Sure. So thank you, Nikki, and thanks, Sheila, and welcome everybody. And I'm sure a lot of the participants probably we've spoken or we speak a lot. So before my life at Barnard, I was about 25 years. I was a trader on Wall Street. I ran a trading desk for many years. And it was very interesting. I did not get an MBA because, and this we'll talk about this, it is not a panacea in some ways, because if I had removed myself from the trading desk, they said, well, you may not be getting back because professionally there's different ways to look at it. So that's my background, but I do have a significant amount of experience with both clients and individuals on the desk who did have business degrees, and certainly business is business. And to get back to what Sheila said, she said something very, very interesting. First of all, a business degree is extremely helpful because it gives you flexibility. It gives you a presence and it gives you gravitas as you evolve into your professional lives. It will allow you to be the CFO, the CEO of an organization. It's very difficult to get promoted to some of these senior areas without having a business degree, and it gives you that education. The tools that you need to run a business, is it in accounting, is it in finance, is it e-commerce, marketing? These are practical experiences that you will learn in a business school that you should have under your belt, as if you are especially going to be in a corporate environment where you'd like to be promoted and run that environment. And or, as Sheila said, everything in life is a business. And as an example, I'll just to backtrack a little bit. When I first got here, I had a student and she was looking at applying to a business program that after 2 or 3 years, she would be accepted. And she wanted to run her own nonprofit, and her premise was, I'm going to be running this nonprofit and I want to be able to manage the money. It's my fiduciary responsibility. Interestingly enough, when she wrote the essay to the school, she didn't mention any of that. And I said, this is a great essay, but look at a business school curriculum. It's all about making money. So in your essay, you should state, I want to run this business myself. I have that fiduciary responsibility, but I need to learn the tools. It worked out for her. She got it. So in a general sense, that's my vision on business schools. Now, a couple of things. First of all, top business schools now are different than when Sheila and I were coming out of an undergraduate institution. They generally require 3 to 5 years of experience before you enter these schools. And a lot of that is because they understand, first of all, you will be surrounded by individuals in that school who have worked. They are really very dedicated. It's different than an undergraduate institution. It is to the point. You are figuring out what you want to do based on your curriculum, and it's very directive. Also, they're saying after 3 to 5 years of work, you probably have a better idea of where you want to go within a particular industry, within that industry, in that organization, and what part of that organization you'd like to advance on and possibly run. So that gives you the chance after 3 to 5 years to resettle, rethink, and now I have a real plan. And that's probably the correct timeline for any individual. Getting out of an undergraduate institution, especially a liberal arts institution, sometimes it's, you got to figure it out as you go. It's individual organizations and companies right now, when they're hiring our students, they're not necessarily looking for business degrees, certainly because they're entry level, either from the analyst role or from the entry level. However, a lot of, especially the larger institutions, will reimburse or give you tuition reimbursement, especially if those courses are relatable to the area that you're in. So if you're in the finance department or the accounting department and you're going to go to a business school, a lot of organizations will give you tuition reimbursement for the classes that are relatable to the area that you're in. So that's important. And I think the IRS will allow you $5,500 tax-free if indeed you are getting this benefit you're getting this benefit from the so that's particularly important as well. So this is coming as well. Remember that the top degrees could be e-commerce, they could be marketing, finance, or accounting, but I wouldn't look at it that way. I would look at the organization that you're in. If you're happy there, that industry, I would like to progress in this particular area. There's coursework like that available for you to progress so that you can, again, evolve and possibly run that company one day. You know, every CFO, every CEO of a large organization does have an MBA. Of course they do. So that's something to think about. Is it a panacea? No, but it is certainly a significant asset if it fits within your schedule and you really laser focused after a couple of years. This is the path I'd like to take. So open to a lot of questions. It's a very broad question. But from what I've seen and from the individuals that I know that have gotten MBAs, I don't think many of those folks are ever going to say, boy, that was a bad idea. I mean, generally, again, after 3 to 5 years of working, you have a pretty good idea if you're happy in that organization and if you're happy in that industry. I mean, you're going to stay with that company forever, but you're beginning to get your legs under you and know, this is pretty good. This is what I want to do.
Excellent. That's great. And thanks, Greg, for that experience with past students that you've advised, and also Sheila giving us a snapshot of, how you worked through this process to eventually end up with 2 postgraduate degrees. So before we shift to the student questions, I did want to ask, what are you all's thoughts, and both Sheila and Greg can answer this, and thinking about when a student is thinking about this, how do they narrow their choices down? How are they narrow a choice down to a list of schools and thinking about what might be best and where might be best for them when they're thinking of, business is so wide and so broad, but how do they actually narrow down to think about a place, a location, a list? What suggestions would you give?
Sure. Sheila, you want to go first?
Sure. Well, I would think probably about geography a little bit. Where do you want to work? Where do you want to live long term? Where do you want to work? Because I think access to people for interviews and, jobs in that summer between the 2 years, is pretty good. And the other thing is, what do you want to do? Do you want to be in finance? Do you want to be in accounting? And what particular programs do those people have for those? One thing I was going to say, Greg, I don't know if you've seen from any of the employers, does anybody subsidize, somebody who wants to go back?
Yes. Right. So tuition reimbursement is there,
Right.
but generally it is for, I don't know if you missed it, we had some feedback. It's generally for the reimbursement in the area that you're working in. So if you're in that accounting finance area,
Right.
they will reimburse you to take accounting and finance courses. They may not help you in the marketing
Right.
part of it, but they will reimburse you for that part. And the IRS gives you up to, I think, $5,500. It's around that number, tax-free as a benefit. So even though, and the only caveat to that is employers may say, okay, we've paid for X amount of courses. We need you then to stay a year after you graduate, because we've invested in you. You can leave, but then you may have to pay us back for some of that reimbursement that we've given you.
Right.
Or they may say to you, look, this is a full-time, and then that you can go back to that, Sheila, depending on the program, if it's full-time or part-time. But if you're going to go away for full-time, we're still paying for part of that degree. When you come back, we'd like you to stay for a year or 2.
Right.
Because
you have to make a commitment. Right. The other factor to consider, I was thinking too, Nikki, is like a lot of these, I think Columbia used to have the weekend, that executive program, if you don't have the option to not work.
Yeah, the EMBA, the executive MBA, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. So if it's not an option to, not work for 2 years or, full time, or, you have to have a family, whatever, I think that's also another option. Like I went to NYU, at night, part time, and then in the summers, but I think that's, an individual decision too on, what you can afford to do.
And the other thing too is, look, as Nikki was asking, or, how do you pick a business school? I mean, that's a really great question, because how do you pick it at a graduate institution? Do I want to go liberal arts? Do I want to go become an architect? Do I want to go to a business school? But if you're picking an institution, a business school, graduate program, really dig down into their website and what course offerings they are. And it changes all the time, because business is so broad now. you have e-commerce, you have maybe one particular school that is heavily involved more in the CS part, engineering part of it, the artificial intelligence part of it, where one might be a little bit more accounting, finance, and you could see that basis their course curriculum. So get your data in front of you and use it as objectively as you can. You know, this is a business school. It's not undergraduate. It's a different way of going to school because this is a professional degree. So you're looking at geography, and then from there, you are certainly looking at the curriculum, which one is skewed more towards where intellectually it's part of what you want to do, and also professionally, how that is going to help me when I come out with this degree, because employers will look at that. Where is that degree? What does it really say? And believe me, that coursework is so deep. I just happened to be looking at Gabelli's undergraduate business school at Fordham, and it's massive, the amount of classes, but you can start to break that down, which one is fitting for me. And then the one thing that I didn't realize, and this is the props to be on Barnard, but we always talk about business schools graduate programs, and Dean Aronstein, and you've all met him, he says something very interesting too, it's cost. A lot of time the cost that's on the website is not necessarily what you're going to pay. There's optionality to that too. You are coming out of Barnard, you're really in a great spot. People want you. Schools want to have you, so you can do your shopping. You know, what am I being offered too? This is a two-way street. You're lucky to go to that business school. They're lucky to have you. And you have to look at it that way. I'm really lucky, but you're lucky to get me. I'm really smart. I'm really directive. I know what I want to do because I have my data. I looked at that website, and when you write that essay or you have an interview with that business school, not only do I want to come to your school, these are the classes I want to take. This is why, and you go back to your employer, this is what I'm taking because when I come back, I'm going to run your department. But I know this. So that's how I look at it.
Excellent, excellent. What, Sheila, did you want to add?
No, I'm good.
Yeah, and when you think about that, like, when you think about, you know, what you have to offer, and thinking about even individuals who say they want to go work first, you know, Greg and Sheila as well, like, are employers expecting you to say, okay, in the next 2 or 3 years, I'm going to go towards an MBA? Are they expecting you as an applicant? Are they expecting that this is something in your path, or is that not even in the question anymore?
I think that's a great question. I think that just now recently, employers might be dictating that more. So in a larger company, if you're in a consulting company, like we've seen in some of the consulting, they expect you to work a year or two, and then they expect you to go on and get your MBA. You know, it's not really an option. You could stay, but the fast track of those who go on and get the MBA. Some of the larger companies, Bayer, you know, General Electric, these are really long-term programs. They anticipate that our superstars, the people we're bringing in, will be taking business school classes, either part-time, weekends, full-time. We will subsidize some of it, but we're anticipating that. They're not anticipating necessarily that the people that we hire from an undergraduate institution are going to be able to show that, because maybe how could you? They're really looking to hire, as we've always said, really smart people who can crush an interview, who can be who can dictate why they want to be in that organization and show their stuff. You know, look, this is where I come from. I want to work here. From there, then the conversation will go from the employer. Look, this is what our fast track looks like. This is what you're getting into when you take this offer. You don't have to take it, but we would if I were you.
Sheila, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the other thing from the employer perspective, it's a real plus when you send somebody, you know, to a business school, the exposure to not only other people, but what's going on in other businesses. You know, I think that that's attractive also, you know, that you're in classes with people in other businesses, or have been. A lot of the people that teach at business schools are, you know, real business people who are running companies and things like that. And I think that's a real plus from an employer perspective, you know, of sending somebody or encouraging people to go. I think that's, you know, that's another real benefit.
Well, I'm glad you said that too, Sheila, because, you know, beyond Barnard, you know, everyone sees that we network all the time. You go to business school, you don't know who you're sitting next to.
Exactly.
That could be the next person who's going to reinvent the wheel. It
Right,
is
you meet some amazing people across the board, yeah.
right. It's a place to network because that graduating class that you're in, believe me, we'll have people who are going to run the world.
Right. I mean, I still do a little, I've had people call me, I went to business school a long time ago, but, people who are looking for a lawyer, that kind of, that you've kept up with. And so that's absolutely true. The whole networking thing is really big.
Somebody did go to school with Jamie Dimon. I did. They went to business school with him. And if they were buds, I'm sure it helped them.
Right.
That's a great point. And, as students are thinking about networking, when they're even thinking about the application stage of it, what would you suggest for current students and alums who are on this session now as they think of, how to even position themselves to be good candidates for their top MBA program of choice? What should they do? What can they do now?
Well, I think there's a certain fundamentals kind of language of business, read the paper, read kind of keep a little bit abreast of the financial news, know what's kind of going on. I think that's something that, demonstrates a real interest and, a desire for knowledge. I think, when you talk to students, even who are going into the consulting world, you can't have no feel for, I think, what you're interested in. So I think the language of business is a little important. And I mean, I don't think you have to do anything much more than kind of read the Wall Street Journal occasionally, know what people are talking about, what's the stock market about, that kind of thing. I think that demonstrates, a bona fide, interest in that area. Greg, you probably have some other ideas.
Well, that's correct. I mean, I think the search is almost like, and our students are great at this, is networking and prepping for a job interview. So the alumni network is really tight. So if you maybe narrow down 3 business schools that you're thinking about, the curriculum is right, everything seems cool, I would reach out to an alum and I would ask her, either one that's in this program or just recently out of the program, tell me about it. And, you want to gather data. What classes did you take? What classes did really benefited you? Is it benefiting you right now if you're working? So that, again, you will be asked either by your employer who's giving you some type of reimbursement, or if it's an interview to get into the school, the 3 questions. Why are you coming here? What do you want to do with this degree? And why us? I mean, they could be asking you that. And the ability to articulate it data-wise, this program for why, this is why I want to do it, and give the data like that right to the point. It's just like a job interview. You'll light up the room. Boy, I have a person, it's like they're coming to the school. They're telling me the courses they want to take. They're not even in the school yet. That's how you learn. And if you can't get that from an alum, even better. And you'll get a feel for them and say, look, everyone tells you to take this coursework, forget it. It's impossible. I'm not going to help.
Right.
Or here's the jewel that nobody knows about. This is the one you got to take because this professor, she's a rock star. Follow her lead.
Right. And even NYU has some real name people on Wall Street and stuff like that. And, you wanted to, hear those people and be in a class with those people because they were out there doing it. And I think that's it. And you can check up on the faculty at any of these business schools, that's something, I want to hear, Henry Paulson or somebody like that, I think that's also, a good way to go.
And the current thing too is it's just like anything else as you're researching it. How nimble is that school in addressing what's relevant right now? The world has flipped from COVID March till today. Some business schools will evolve and address how the economy is changing dramatically. And it would have changed anyway, but it's changing much quicker. Are they addressing that at least in their messaging to incoming students or potential students? Because if it's the same curriculum as 3 years ago, 5 years ago, it's okay, but the world is significantly different in 3 months, let alone where we'll be in September again in a full cycle.
The other thing is I think they all probably publish or you can have access to their job placement
Yes.
Right? So same as beyond Barnard, right? Where are people getting jobs, or are they getting jobs? How many interviews do people get? And I think that's all, accessible also, which is probably something you're interested in. Again, the world changes quickly. So 2 years from now, who knows? But I think that's also, who's in charge of the placement, who comes to interview there, that kind of thing. I think that's information that's available also at most of the business schools. That might be
People look at Beyond Barnard all the time.
right. Right.
How we
Right.
do?
And thinking about the way, the world is changing, what should applicants be looking at places that have an international business component? Is that something that, business schools are still or are thinking about? What are you all's thoughts on that?
Well, absolutely, because the world is a small place, and that's why, international business will begin to evolve into two areas, I think, which are really relevant. One is like the legal and compliance part of what's happening in this world, because as the world gets global, I might be doing business in the United States, fine, but if I have to do business in the Far East, in Asia, or in North America, or down in South America, Central America, the compliance issues will be completely different. There could be different ways of doing business that I would run afoul of if I did it here in the States. So anybody that can work in a large organization, which, believe me, has offices around the world, I need someone to have the expertise to say, the way we're doing things here, we cannot do there. I don't have all the answers, but I know we can. And that may allow you, the student who's learning that, you become like Sheila. Maybe then I finish my degree and then I want to become a lawyer, international lawyer. Maybe I don't, maybe I do. But I think international business, anything to do with electronic commerce, because everything is e-commerce. You want to trade stocks, you do it online. You want to go to Amazon, you do it online. You want to give Human Rights Watch a check, it's online. They advertise. So that's part of where the world is going. Even the marketing perspective of that will be skewed that way. Those are absolutely the institutions that look at the world as a really small place that we have to have a lot of knowledge about are the ones that are preparing students the best.
And even in my small law firm, I frequently, pretty regularly, deal in Canada. Canadian citizens who are U.S. citizens with Canadian assets, Canadian citizens who live in Florida. So, I agree with that. And a colleague of mine, his son recently graduated from Harvard Business School, and he spent one semester, I think, in Dubai or, so I think that's part of the curriculum that you spend, some time in another country. And absolutely, I think everybody has to be able to be flexible about that. I've seen, just in a law practice, I deal in Canada, you deal in South America. I have, a few people in South America. So, to have that flexibility, I think is important.
And before we shift to the students, their questions, the cost benefit analysis, how does one think about that, especially in the year 2020 when things are, we just don't know what the future may hold. And so that's taught us one thing. What's the cost benefit analysis of an MBA?
And that's a really good question. And I think that, again, it's not something that's going to be written in stone. So, I always laugh with Barnard students, and I'm sorry if you've heard this before. It's not an A to B to C direct line. It's going to be A, B, Q, G, B, D, X, Y, a couple of numbers thrown into C. You'll get there. So if you're taking a look at a business school and you've sat down and you're really honest with yourself, it could be, I'm going to be running my own company. I need this expertise because if I don't have it, I'm not going to be able to run it well. That's part of your cost analysis. And if I run it, how much money can I make? Or if I'm in a large organization, I know what the executives are getting paid effectively. If it's publicly traded, it is out there for people to know. And that if you want to be within a large organization and do extremely well, you're going to need that MBA. So if you do well, and you'll see your trajectory possibly, because as you evolve and become successful, you can know I could be running part of the organization. I could be running a division. I could be the CEO someday. I know what these people get paid. It's publicly traded. It's out there. I cannot get there unless I get the MBA. I'm not. It's just not going to happen. So that could factor into it's business. Everything is a risk. I say that in quotes. It's not a risk. You can't presuppose everything. But the more tools you have in your toolbox, the higher the likelihood is of your success. That makes sense.
I mean, I felt like, when I get out of school, the country was in a pretty deep recession. And I felt that the more flexibility, really, that I could have, the more, potential, for the job market, because, maybe they weren't going to hire in public accounting or something. And then when I went back to law school, and same with the business school, I think I looked upon it as an investment, really. So I was going to invest, my time, forego the salary for the long run, the long run, short run trade-off, that in the long run, that was going to make me more money. And in the short run, I was going to be broke. But I think, you have to, everybody's do that analysis for themselves. I mean, students come out of school now with more debt, than people did. So that's a factor, that you have that. But I think for me, it was like a long run, short run trade-off that I think I was willing to, suffer in the short run for the long run, trajectory of income and flexibility in the job market. And that's just the last note I'll say. I think, people's careers are not A to B to C. They're not straight lines. They move, and you have to be flexible, especially the way the world is now. You're not going to get a job and probably stay in it for 30 or 40 years. So you have to always be updating your skills.
And to Sheila's point, that's why business schools like you to have 3 to 5 years experience, because when I got to college, I went to undergraduate Fordham Business School. I said, for sure, I'm going to get an MBA. Absolutely, I'm going to get an MBA. And then when I got into trading, when I finally realized that, I thought to myself, you know what? I don't want to run a company. I don't want to be a CFO. I don't want to be a CEO, but I want to be trading. And if I'm going to be trading and doing this for a living, I don't need an MBA. Did that work out for me? It absolutely did. Would I recommend that to somebody? I don't think so, because to Sheila's point, I missed out on a tool, because a career is no longer 30 years. The careers you have now, if you're working for 5 years, they could change in 15 because technology will change it. It will flip it. Look at Blockbuster. This is a bad example, but Blockbuster a couple of years ago, you guys are all maybe too young, was so big you can't find them now. So the more tools you have, the better off you'll be. If I had gone to business school and trading stopped after 10 years, but I had more accounting and finance, that would have allowed me to dovetail somewhere else. So it worked out for me. I would recommend it. But after 3 to 5 years, you have a clear idea of really where I want to be.
Excellent. This has been wonderful. Excellent gems of knowledge and wisdom shared. So we're going to shift to our student questions. So we have, a little less than 20 minutes left for us to take some questions from the group. You all can either drop them in the chat, or you can do the raise hand feature. We can all see that. This has been an excellent session. Again, we are recording this, so it'll be up on the Barnard Beyond Barnard YouTube page, so that people can go in and review at your leisure. Great information shared. And then all of our wonderful panelists are also available. Greg, of course, is in Beyond Barnard's office. And then Sheila is a wonderful alum who actually has a project listed in Beyond Mentoring right now. It is a paid project. So she has a project. She's looking for a student. I think it's a 20-hour project. So you would work with Sheila directly, and then you would actually get paid for that. And then that's also a great way to network with Sheila, get to know her, talk to her about her experiences a little more. All right, so can you talk a little bit more about the Barnard Columbia Business School Deferred Admissions Program? Yes, we will do that in depth tomorrow. So please come back tomorrow at 1 o'clock. We will do a whole hour on that session, that program tomorrow. But it's an excellent program, and it feeds into what Sheila and Greg talked about today, because it encourages you to work for and actually the minimum is 2 years, so 2 to 3 years before coming back to Columbia Business School. So you're admitted as a Barnard undergrad, and then you go work for 2 to 3 years, and then you start your MBA program. So please come back tomorrow, and we'll go through that specifically. All right. Any specific advice for people who want to go to business school but already have niche interests in nonprofit work? Are there specific programs you recommend?
Well, I mean, that goes back to maybe what I was talking about before. If you are really interested in a nonprofit, wonderful, great. But a nonprofit at the end of the day is like any other business. They need to ask for and solicit funding to allow their nonprofit to function. And they need within that nonprofit individuals who can manage that money, run that money, and do it well, because it is your fiduciary responsibility. If I'm getting money, I have to make sure that the people who give me this money are confident that I'm not just frittering away, that it's going to the cause that this nonprofit is helping. So that's number one. And then within that nonprofit, it depends what the nonprofit is. The business school may allow you to have an expertise in a particular area. Again, it doesn't have to be the finance or accounting. Maybe it's something to do with international affairs. Maybe it has to do with international business, because there will be relationships between, if you are talking internationally, between different countries. So within the niche of business school programming, you can begin to extract the courses you're going to want to take that will allow you to be a better nonprofit.
I would just say that if I were interested in the nonprofit, I think the most valuable thing in a business school would be connections. If most of the rest of the people are, going out to run the world, that would certainly be the people that you'd be interested in making a connection with to fund, whatever it is your niche interest is. And I think, that's something that would be really, worthwhile.
Great question. And I'll ask one more, just as our students are typing. Sheila, any thoughts on students who are thinking about multiple postgraduate degrees? Would you suggest that, or would you say, at this point, just choose one, or what would you think?
I guess it, depends upon your specific interest. I mean, I think, for me, I kind of had that business bent, but for, if maybe you want to be an academic, I mean, that was like something I would have considered, but, I think that you have to weigh, again, the cost and benefit of all these things. And again, I don't think anybody's career is linear anymore. What's going to provide you with the most flexibility and, kind of, maybe the next 5 years. I don't think beyond, the next, say, 3 to 5 years, but, so whatever is going to give you, kind of the path to go anywhere, that you'd like to go.
Again, and also a professional degree is a professional degree. You can always take your professional degree with you. If you have an expertise in a field, if you have an expertise in again, forget the accounting will always be accounting, but if you have an expertise in international business or in e-marketing, as a professional, yes, you might have learned something this year. In 5 or 10 years, the world may have flipped, but as a professional, you're reading journals, you're working, you're keeping up to date with what's happening as the world is evolving. But your degree is always your degree. Your MBA is always your MBA. It's acknowledged. It's an achievement. It separates individuals within large organizations. It just does. I mean, there's a hierarchy to that. So again, if it's the choice you make, it's an investment in a very long-term process. I mean, most people that we're talking to now, they'll graduate at 20 to 22. You're probably going to be working for the next 40 to 45 years, hopefully. And that's great. Yeah, even if you've made money, it's mentally stimulated. It's wonderful. It's great. You're conquering the world. So it's a long-term process. It's a really, really a long-term investment.
The other thing I'd say, Nikki, is the other thought that I've always had is, when you have graduate programs that even lead you to some kind of a professional certification or licensing, like I'm a CPA, and if the world went to hell, I could always, go back to practicing that. So, some of these programs that lead to, the Series 7 or those certified financial analysts, those things also you have when, business changes, like there's no more, all brokerage is electronic now, but if you've got your license, you can always do something. It gives you a lot more flexibility, I think. And some of the graduate programs give you the requirements to take those professional licensing exams. Like, when I was at NYU, that you have to have certain coursework, and then you have that license. I have a law license. I can practice that no matter, if there's, the world goes to hell, you have that, that you can always do something.
And last thing, and if there's no more, we'll take this one and then we'll do some just closing thoughts. Any thoughts on like what, again, the whole, what can I do now? Internships, and now that, a lot of things are virtual, the possibility of types of internships has probably actually grown because of things that you can do virtually. So any suggestions for students who might be on the call of like where they should be thinking of just dipping their toe in the water if this is of interest for them as they think about internships?
I mean, that's a great question and I think that's exactly what an internship is. It's yeah, you'll make some money, and it's intellectually stimulating, but it's giving you a view of what other individuals are doing with that organization. If you always wanted to work if it's business, in finance, or a large company, it could be, Bayer, again, they make pharmaceuticals. I really think I want to work in there. Within that division, sure, you're learning a quick skill set, hopefully to get a full-time offer, but the people who are running this, what are they doing? What is their life like? They may be managing 20 people, 50 people, 100 people. What is their responsibility? What are they? What do they do? Do I want to look at your heroes? Do I want to emulate that? Find people that you want to emulate in business because, boy, that she is crushing it. She runs the department. I want to be like her. Or, boy, she's crushing it. I don't really want to do that because I'm seeing it firsthand. So, yes, in the short term, you want to get that internship. Hopefully you get a full-time, learn your skills, but also have eyes wide open. Look at the people around you and see what they're doing. And do you want to do that?
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, Beyond Barnard obviously wasn't there when I was there, but I think you take advantage of as many of those as you can, paid, unpaid. To Greg's point, a woman came to talk when I was a senior who was worked at Solomon Brothers, which is gone, right, on the current foreign. She was a foreign currency trader. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do. And so I went there one day. I don't think I probably could have made it, one day. People were yelling at each other. It was, they were, they had 3 phones, and I was like, okay. So, that was a really valuable lesson for me, and the woman lived out of a suitcase. She traveled all the time and stuff. So I think people should just maximize the opportunity, even if you take something and you're like, this is just not for me, that's really valuable to find out. What kind of an environment do you want to work in? Do you want people yelling at you all the time? Or, do you want, you're more methodical, you work through long-term projects as, traders have a real short term. If you can't give me the answer in 10 seconds, so.
Which is
so I think those are really, really valuable, really.
You're right. And it's the experiences. Look, I would also look at it the following way. Sheila and I always talk about this, it's that discussion that you have, the dining room discussion, or the discussion you have with yourself, or your discussion with Nikki. Why did you choose this path? Because I have these facts. Because I experienced it. I went, half of life is showing up, half of life is who you know. And you will be comfortable with the decision you make, as opposed to, well, someone said possibly, coulda, maybe, shoulda, innuendo. It's irrelevant. I went, I learned, I will follow. And that will give you ease of your decision. You'll be really comfortable in it. You know, as comfortable as you can be making a huge expenditure of time and money and effort, but I have the data, I can act on it because I did the homework. I have my homework.
And like, be honest with yourself. You know, I mean, do you, you know, where do you function well? You know, do you, you know, I was from a big family, so you could say anything to me, and you know, it doesn't bother me. If you know, if you're more sensitive, you got to be honest about the work environment you want to be in too. So.
Thank you both so much. I mean, this has been extremely helpful, very practical, very genuine, very real, and the perspective is very now, what's happening now. And I really thank you all so much. Any last thoughts that you would suggest, or just words of advice you want to give to the students? And then we'll close out from there. So we'll start with you, Sheila.
Okay, sure. I just, I think it from the perspective of, you know, longer career, you just to be flexible, really, because I think the world's going to change so many times over the course of your career, and you're going to have to learn new skills, you know, adjust to a different way of working, maybe a different environment, and, you know, to never really stop learning. I mean, I have CLE requirements and stuff like that for lawyers, and you just can never stop learning and being flexible about where you are and where the world is.
And the thing I would say is just have some fun with it. I mean, it's a grand adventure. It's the few times in your life where you're a free radical. You could go. You're not constrained yet. So it's a big adjustment. It's like when you got into undergraduate, it was like a big, exciting time. You picked Barnard. It's the same thing. It shouldn't, I know it's a big deal, but don't make it work. It's a great adventure.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Sheila. Thanks, Greg.
You're welcome.
Thanks to those students. Please be sure to just make sure you sign in on that sign-in sheet that's in the chat. This will be recorded, so you can go back. I'm sure that you will want to go back and take a look. They had some great information and advice to share. Also, if you want to go check out Sheila's posting, it's on Beyond Mentoring. You can go get there through the Beyond Barnard page, and Sheila has a paid listing there. So if you even just want to get to know Sheila even more, this is a great little sneaky way to do it. Not sneaky at all.
Thank you for that ad, Nikki.
Yes. All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone for joining us.
Okay.
Bye.
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 Thank you. Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome.